We can all be different, there's no fear or shame. Oh, but I still love you just the same. We can all be different, there's no fear or shame. Oh, but I still love you just the same. Dance to the rhythm of your own drum. Dance to the rhythm of your own drum. We can all be different, there's no fear or shame. Oh, but I still love you just the same. We can all be different, there's no fear or shame. Oh, but I still love you just the same. Just break it down now. Dance. Dance to the rhythm. Dance to the rhythm of your own drum.
Good afternoon. On behalf of Superintendent Leslie Winter, the Mississinewa School Board of Trustees, we welcome all students, staff, and visitors in attendance. We are proud to bring everyone together for this program to celebrate the civil rights of all individuals. I would now like to introduce Mississinewa High School student Corey Driver, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand and remain standing for the national anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic of which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
the students at each of our buildings were asked to choose a civil rights hero and write an essay explaining why that individual mattered then and why they still matter today. At this time, I would like to invite middle school student Dristan Byer to come accompany me at the podium. Dristan wrote his essay on Whitney Young, and Dristan has asked that I read it. Whitney Young was an American civil rights leader. Mr. Young's work was considered instrumental in breaking down the barriers of segregation and inequality throughout America. He led a national civil rights organization called the National Urban League from 1961 to 1971 during the hard years of the civil rights movement. As president of the National Urban League, Mr. Young began unique programs to combat the ills of racism and poverty in America. He was also one of the organizers of the historic March on Washington in 1963. The March on Washington was important to the civil rights movement because it pressured the administration of John F. Kennedy to push a strong federal civil rights bill through Congress. It strengthened voting rights laws and provided assistance for schools that were voluntarily desegregating. Mr. Young also wanted to provide significant financial help to help solve America's racial problems. He created Street Academy, which prepared high school dropouts for college, and New Thrust, which helped people identify and solve problems throughout their community. Today, the National Urban League works to provide economic empowerment, educational opportunities, and the guarantee of civil rights for the underserved in America. It was an honor to have researched Mr. Young's contributions to society as a whole. Thank you, Dristan.
Dream a dream.
Robert Kennedy, brother of former President John F. Kennedy, was campaigning for his own presidential election in 1968. While giving a speech here in Indiana at Ball State University, he heard the terrible news that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed. After hearing this news, he canceled his visit to the downtown Indianapolis campaign headquarters and drove directly to the Broadway Christian Center in Indianapolis, where a large, primarily African-American crowd awaited him. Stepping onto the bed of a flatbed truck, he discarded the speech he had written weeks ago for this event and instead looked directly into the upturned faces before him and spoke.
Ladies and gentlemen, he said, I'm only going to talk to you just for a minute or so this evening because I have some very sad news for all of you. And I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee.
The screams and wailing were heard blocks away. He continued.
Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in cause of that effort.
During Kennedy's speech, which lasted only around 6 minutes, he spoke from his heart and connected with his audience, most of them filled with shock, grief, and rage. Kennedy had not spoken publicly of his brother John F. Kennedy's assassination since 1963, which was 5 years prior to this night, but he chose to do so at this moment. He reminded the crowd that he understood how they felt, that a member of his own family had also been killed by an assassin's bullet. RFK found comfort in the words of an ancient Greek philosophers after his brother's death in 1963. Now, 5 years later, he shared a poem with the crowd that was fitting to the grief they felt after hearing the news of MLK's death.
Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until, in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God.
Robert Kennedy then concluded his speech with what he thought the United States needed to do in this moment of tragedy.
What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion towards one another, and a feeling of justice towards those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black.
Soothed by Kennedy's words, the crowd dispersed peacefully, although other American cities such as Washington, D.C., Chicago, Illinois, and Baltimore, Maryland erupted in riots that night. Indianapolis' streets remained quiet. The day before Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, he concluded the last speech he would ever give with this.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will, and He's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land, and I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
To continue the topic of civil rights heroes that mattered then and still matter today, I would like to introduce Mississinewa High School student Emerson Barron and have her come read her winning essay.
Bayard Rustin, a prominent civil rights activist, once said, "No individual did more to help the poor, the dispossessed, and the working class in the United States around the world than A. Philip Randolph." A. Philip Randolph is considered to be one of the 6 key leaders of the civil rights movement, with others being Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, Whitney Young, James Farmer, and Roy Wilkins. Randolph is specifically known for his advocacy of equal opportunities for African Americans in the workplace and his activism during the civil rights movement. In 1925, Randolph organized and led the first successful African American labor union named the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. The Brotherhood became a symbol of African American advancement by improving the harsh conditions the workers were subjected to through higher wages, and a shorter work month. In 1941, Randolph called for a march on Washington and protests of discrimination in the military, which led to President Franklin D. Roosevelt offering to pass an executive order that would prevent discrimination in return for the march being called off. Although the 1941 march never happened, 20 years later it paved the way for Randolph to co-organize the March on Washington to protest segregation and advocate for voting rights. Without Randolph's activism, Martin Luther King Jr. would have never been able to share his I Have a Dream speech, which is considered a major turning point in the civil rights movement. Today, African Americans still benefit from the equal opportunities, treatment, and pay that Randolph fought for within the workplace. A. Philip Randolph's work remains incredibly important as his advocacy for civil and workers' rights laid the foundation for ongoing civil rights movements. The March on Washington in 1963 built momentum and led to legislation being passed that still benefits not just African Americans, but all people of color today. Legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which prohibit discrimination in the workplace and from discriminatory voting practices. His work has led to non-discriminatory, safer, and fairer conditions for African Americans in the workforce and the military. We must remember those who have made these lasting changes to secure basic human rights for people who have been silenced for so long. A. Philip Randolph's activism serves to show us how one man's actions can have a lasting impact and serve as an inspiration for future generations of activism. In an era marked by ongoing discussions about systemic racism, racial inequality, and economic inequality, Randolph's commitment to fighting for the poor, the dispossessed, and the working class continues to inspire current generations to work towards a more just and equal society. Next, the band will be performing Coming Forward to Carry Me Home. Juneteenth is a holiday celebrated on June 19th each year to commemorate the emancipation of enslaved peoples in the United States. Coming Forward to Carry Me Home was written in commemoration of this important event in our country's history. It is a beautiful tribute to the heroes who helped bring about this important moment of change and is based on the spiritual Swing Low, Sweet Chariot.
States.
To make a proclamation recognizing February as National African American History Month. The following is the first proclamation made by the first African American president in U.S. history, President Barack Obama, in 2009. The history of African Americans is unique and rich, one that has helped to define what it means to be an American. Arriving on ships on the shores of North America more than 300 years ago, recognized more as possessions than people, African Americans have come to know the freedoms fought for in establishing the United States and gained through the use of our founding principles of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to assembly, and due process of law. The ideals of the founders became more real and more true for every citizen as African Americans pressed us to realize our full potential as a nation and to uphold those ideals for all who enter into our borders and embrace the notion that we are all endowed with certain unalienable rights. Since Carter G. Woodson first sought to illuminate the African American experience, each February we pause to reflect on the contributions of this community to our national identity. The history is one of struggle for the recognition of each person's humanity, as well as an influence on the broader American culture. African Americans designed our beautiful capital city, gave us the melodic rhythms of New Orleans jazz, issued new discoveries in science and medicine, and forced us to examine ourselves in the pages of classic literature. This legacy has only added luster to the brand of the United States, which has drawn immigrants to our shores for centuries. The narrative of the African American pursuit of full citizenship with all the rights and privileges afforded others in this country is also the story of a maturing young nation. The voices and examples of the African American people worked collectively to remove the boulders of systemic racism and discrimination that pervaded our laws and our public consciousness for decades. Through the work of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver, Martin Luther King Jr. and Thurgood Marshall, the African American community has steadily made progress toward the dreams within its grasp and the promise of our nation. Meanwhile, the belief that those dreams might one day be realized by all our citizens gave African American men and women the same sense of duty and love of country that led them to shed blood in every war we have ever fought, to invest hard-earned resources in their communities with the hope of self-empowerment, to pass the ideals of this great land down to their children and grandchildren. As we mark National African American History Month, we should take note of this special moment in our nation's history and the actors who worked so diligently to deliver us to this place. Because of their work, including the contributions of those luminaries on the front lines and great advocates behind the scenes, we as a nation were able to take the dramatic steps we have so far. Now, therefore, I, Barack Obama, President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of the United States, do hereby proclaim February as National African American History Month. And I call upon all public officials, educators, librarians, and all the people of the United States to observe this month with appropriate ceremonies, activities, and programs that raise awareness and appreciation of African American history, which is why we're here today. Thank you for observing and commemorating the great steps we have taken to secure and uphold our civil rights.
Thank you to our band and choir members and their directors. Thank you to our Tribe TV media team, the Mississinawa High School Social Studies Department, and our winning essayists. A final thank you to our Transportation Department and bus drivers for transporting students to and from their respective schools. Thank you for commemorating the Civil Rights Movement with us, and remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The time is always right to do what is right. This is the conclusion of our Civil Rights